A massive 3-year police operation has dealt a severe blow to the Comancheros motorcycle gang across New Zealand. Nearly all members and associates, more than 40 people, are now facing criminal charges. In one decisive strike, police dismantled the gang's leadership, arresting the last senior Comanchero boss. A man accused of moving hundreds of kilograms of methamphetamine and cocaine now sits behind bars. Nearly 140 charges, 3 years of raids, and a gang empire shaken to its core. But the bigger question remains: what happens to the criminal underworld when its top tier falls? Origins of the Comancheros. The Comanchero Motorcycle Club didn't start in New Zealand. It was founded in Sydney, Australia in 1966. What began as a small outlaw motorcycle group evolved into one of the most violent and organized gangs in the country. By the 1980s, the Comancheros were infamous for bloody turf wars, particularly with the Bandidos. The 1984 Milpera massacre, a shootout that left 7 people dead, including a 14-year-old girl, cemented their reputation as a fearless, brutal organization built on violence and power. Over the years, the gang expanded rapidly, first across Australia, then into Southeast Asia. But their most aggressive growth began around 2016, when they arrived in New Zealand. From day one, they didn't come to blend in. They came to dominate. In just a few years, the New Zealand chapter became a major criminal operation, complete with luxury cars, high-end houses, and a growing reputation for intimidation and control. But behind the glamour, authorities say, was a sophisticated drug and money laundering network worth millions. The Tauranga Port Meth Heist. In December 2024, New Zealand was rocked by one of the boldest daylight crimes in its history. 2 men broke into a secure shipping container at the port of Tauranga and stole 5 suitcases filled with 200 kilograms of methamphetamine, the largest seizure of its kind in the country. What they didn't know was that customs had already flagged the container during a routine X-ray inspection. Police had eyes on it the entire time. When the suspects tried to flee, officers quickly intercepted their car using road spikes and arrested them within minutes. Inside, the suitcases were drugs, gloves, and tools used to cut into the container, a sign this was a highly coordinated heist, not a random theft. Investigators soon realized this wasn't just about stolen drugs. It exposed insider knowledge. Someone with access to shipping data had tipped them off. Within days, 4 men were charged with drug importation, burglary, and possession of criminal tools. Authorities estimated the street value at $75 million, equal to around 10 million doses of meth. But the social cost, police said, could exceed $200 million in damage to families and communities. The bust revealed something deeper: organized crime networks exploiting weaknesses in port security through insider access and advanced planning. The 4 operations that took down the gang. From 2021 to late 2024, police launched a series of coordinated campaigns under 4 major operations: Avon, Scuba, Embargo, and Bridle. Each targeted a different layer of the Comancheros empire. Operation Scuba targeted the gang's financial network. Investigators uncovered extensive money laundering schemes that funneled drug profits into real estate, vehicles, and luxury goods. Authorities froze more than $8 million in assets, including properties, cash, a Range Rover, and Harley-Davidsons. Operation Avon focused on dismantling the gang's chapters. Police raided dozens of locations across Christchurch, Dunedin, and Auckland, arresting every member of the Christchurch chapter and seizing drugs, firearms, and $2 million in assets. Operation Embargo uncovered a commission system, where members paid a cut from drug profits into gang funds. Those funds financed weapons, property, and even military-style training led by a foreign instructor. Operation Bridle connected the dots between the Tauranga meth heist and the gang's leadership, directly implicating senior figures in organized transnational drug trafficking. By the end, authorities had filed 137 criminal charges, effectively dismantling the gang's leadership structure. The final arrest, April 2025. On April 9, 2025, in the quiet Auckland suburb of Howick, police arrested the Comancheros' national vice president, the last senior member still free. The 36-year-old was accused of organizing the Tauranga meth importation and an attempted cocaine import earlier that year. His charges included meth importation, attempted cocaine possession for supply, and participation in an organized criminal group. Police described his arrest as the final chapter in a 3-year operation that crippled the gang's hierarchy. This wasn't just a domestic operation. It had global reach. The Comancheros maintained connections stretching from Australia and Southeast Asia to South America. The arrested vice president was allegedly coordinating shipments through encrypted communications, using insider contacts at ports and logistics companies to time the arrivals. This mirrored a larger global trend. In previous years, an international sting operation using a fake encrypted app had exposed worldwide criminal networks, including the Comancheros. Thousands of messages revealed their operations, drug movements, cash pickups, and weapons deals, proving how deeply connected they were to global trafficking routes. A new battlefront, organized crime adapts. With the Comancheros' leadership gone, their hold on New Zealand's underworld has fractured. Their ability to coordinate major criminal acts has been severely disrupted, but the vacuum they left may not stay empty for long. Groups like the Mongrel Mob and Filthy Few could attempt to fill the gap. Law enforcement is preparing for possible turf wars, but vows swift action to prevent violent power struggles. Authorities also warn that ports remain vulnerable. Insider threats, corrupt employees, and security gaps continue to pose major risks. Multi-agency cooperation between police, customs, and border forces will be key to stopping future infiltrations. After 3 years of relentless investigation, hundreds of raids, and one historic drug seizure, New Zealand police have dismantled one of the country's most powerful organized crime groups. But the story doesn't end there. Gangs evolve, adapt, and find new ways to survive. Law enforcement officials now see this victory as more than just an arrest record. It's a blueprint for future operations, targeting networks from the top down, following the money, and leveraging technology to break encrypted communication. The Comancheros empire may have fallen, but the war on organized crime continues. The Australian Connection, Operation Whiskey Rebound. February 27, 2025, Brisbane Magistrates Court. A 44-year-old Cleveland man faced charges of drug trafficking and recruiting people into one of Australia's most dangerous criminal organizations. Task Force Maxima claimed he was part of the Comancheros' attempt to rebuild their shattered empire under a new name, the 50 Street Crew. Cleveland, a quiet suburb east of Brisbane, seemed an unlikely center for organized crime. Yet investigators say the man used his suburban home as a hub for covert recruitment. According to Task Force Maxima, the Comancheros were evolving. Their old ways, clubhouses, patches, and public gang symbols, made them easy targets. The new strategy was smarter, quieter, and more dangerous. Recruit ordinary people through gyms, cafes, and small businesses, gradually drawing them into criminal activity under the guise of friendship and opportunity. The 50 Street Crew was meant to be the next generation, a street-level network with no colors, no clubhouse, and no clear hierarchy, but all the same, criminal intent. The Cleveland man allegedly served as the bridge between the old Comanchero leadership and this new generation of criminals. Phone intercepts, financial records, and surveillance linked him to known associates, coded meetings, and unexplained income far beyond his legitimate earnings. Prosecutors argue this was more than recruitment. It was the evolution of organized crime in Australia. Like others involved in the conspiracy, he had learned to operate in the gray areas between legitimate and criminal activity. Many of his actions could be interpreted as innocent business meetings or social interactions. This ambiguity would become critical once his case reached the courts. While Task Force Maxima believed they had strong evidence of a serious criminal conspiracy, convincing a magistrate would be a far greater challenge. The raids conducted on February 6th and 7th across southeast Queensland were meant to gather the final pieces of evidence needed to secure convictions. 15 people were arrested, but the case of the Cleveland man would prove to be the most controversial. He was charged with drug trafficking and recruiting individuals to join a criminal organization, offenses that carried potential sentences of decades in prison. Before his trial, however, he needed to convince a magistrate that he deserved to remain free on bail. The February raids. February 6, 2025, 6 a.m. The Cleveland man awoke to the sound of tactical officers breaching his front door. Operation Whiskey Rebound had reached its climax. There would be no warning, no time to destroy evidence, and no chance to escape. Task Force Maxima had coordinated simultaneous raids at 12 locations across southeast Queensland, from Brisbane to the Gold Coast, from Caboolture to Maryborough. At the Cleveland property, investigators knew exactly what they were looking for. Months of surveillance had identified the home as a crucial node in the recruitment network. Phone intercepts had recorded conversations from this address about bringing new members into the organization. As officers searched the house, they collected everything that might link the resident to the conspiracy: mobile phones containing contact lists with known criminals, financial documents revealing undeclared income, and meeting records aligning with observed recruitment activity. But this was not a typical drug raid. The evidence was subtle and required deep analysis of communications, finances, and behavioral patterns rather than the discovery of drugs or weapons. The Cleveland man was charged with 2 major crimes: drug trafficking and recruiting for a criminal organization. The first carried up to 25 years in prison. The second underscored the government's growing concern over organized recruitment as a community threat. Across other raid sites, the scale of the conspiracy became clear. At a safe house in Dara, police seized a kilogram of cocaine, 85 grams of methamphetamine, a cannabis grow house, a revolver, and 2 kilograms of processed cannabis. A 45-year-old man from Upper Caboolture faced additional charges of grievous bodily harm, deprivation of liberty, and torture. His case demonstrated the violent capacity of the network the Cleveland man was allegedly helping to build. In total, 15 suspects were charged with 54 offenses. While the raids successfully disrupted the recruitment conspiracy, the next challenge was keeping these suspects in custody. The bail hearing. February 27, 2025, Brisbane Magistrates Court. The courtroom was filled with journalists and family members as the Cleveland man's bail hearing began. The prosecution argued that he was part of a dangerous and ongoing criminal enterprise. Detective Inspector Craig Bowman described the recruitment conspiracy as an active threat to public safety. Prosecutor Sarah Mitchell presented evidence including phone intercepts of recruitment discussions, surveillance footage of meetings with known criminals, and financial records suggesting illicit income. "This is not an isolated case of wrongdoing," Mitchell said. The defendant was helping to build a criminal network designed to operate indefinitely. Releasing him on bail would allow him to continue these activities and intimidate witnesses. The prosecution stressed that this new model of gang organization, the so-called 50 Street Crew, was designed to be resilient and adaptive. Arresting one member would not cripple the operation. Defense barrister James Anderson countered that his client was being unfairly portrayed as a key figure in a massive investigation based on circumstantial evidence. The prosecution relies heavily on ambiguous phone calls and guilt by association, he argued. "My client has no history of violence, has attended all previous court proceedings, and poses no flight risk." Anderson suggested that the alleged recruitment discussions could just as easily refer to legitimate business dealings. "The charges are novel and untested," he said. You're being asked to detain a man based on speculation. Magistrate Helen Thompson faced a difficult decision. The evidence was serious but circumstantial. She questioned both sides about the strength of the case and what conditions might control the risk if bail were granted. The prosecution insisted no conditions could prevent further recruitment since the alleged crimes involved ordinary communication and meetings. The defense proposed strict conditions: daily police check-ins, electronic monitoring, and restrictions on contact with known associates. After an hour of deliberation, Magistrate Thompson ruled in favor of bail under strict terms: daily police reporting, surrender of passport, and prohibition of contact with any Comanchero members or associates. The courtroom reacted immediately. His family embraced him, prosecutors were visibly frustrated, and journalists rushed to report the surprising outcome. Aftermath and implications. The Cleveland man's release exposed the deep difficulties law enforcement faces in prosecuting modern organized crime. Traditional methods, once effective against older gangs, struggled against groups that operate within legal gray areas. Task Force Maxima's operation had revealed a sophisticated recruitment network posing genuine threats to public safety. Yet the evidence, built on financial records and coded conversations, didn't always fit the standards required for successful prosecution. The recruitment charge itself was relatively new under Australian law, making it harder to prove when the criminal activity was subtle. For investigators, the bail decision felt like a major setback after months of work. Still, strict bail conditions allowed ongoing monitoring. The case also highlighted the growing challenge of balancing civil liberties with community safety. The Comancheros' evolution represented a new era of organized crime, one that blended legitimacy and criminality so effectively that it became difficult to separate the two. Defense lawyers across Queensland began studying the Cleveland case as a reference for future bail applications involving conspiracy charges. The ruling also sparked debate about whether current laws were sufficient to address evolving criminal tactics. The broader conspiracy. While the Cleveland man regained his freedom, law enforcement remained deeply concerned. The 50 Street crew structure wasn't confined to Queensland. It was spreading across Australia. Former gang members in other states were reportedly adopting similar recruitment strategies to rebuild networks under the radar. Without visible gang markers like clubhouses or patches, it became far harder for prosecutors to argue that individuals posed an ongoing threat. Task Force Maxima's intelligence revealed that recruitment was deliberate and selective. Potential members were chosen for their criminal backgrounds, financial desperation, and psychological suitability. The Cleveland man's connections allowed him to bridge traditional Comanchero figures with new recruits, a vital role in the organization's evolution. His release, despite restrictions, meant those networks could still function indirectly. Experienced criminals often find ways to maintain influence while appearing to comply with court orders. If successful, the 50 Street crew model could inspire similar groups across Australia and beyond, posing a long-term danger to public safety. The Cleveland case became a test of how the justice system would confront modern organized crime while upholding the rule of law. Justice system challenges. When the Cleveland man walked free on February 27, 2025, his case symbolized the complexity of crime and justice in modern Australia, a clash between the need to protect the public and the principles of fairness and due process. Australia, which has more bikers per capita than any other country, has long battled outlaw motorcycle gangs. Among the most infamous was Mahmoud Mick Howie, a Lebanese-born biker who rose to power within the Comancheros. Despite these disruptions, the club continues to operate globally, supported by alliances with other powerful European biker organizations. Their international gatherings, such as anniversary events in Spain attended by members from Australia, Germany, and New Zealand, demonstrate their continued strength and coordination. Law enforcement agencies across continents continue to target the Comancheros, yet under Alex Varela's leadership, the group has adapted and remained resilient. His ability to maintain global unity while expanding operations has cemented his position as one of the most powerful figures in the outlaw motorcycle world. The ongoing struggle between international law enforcement and the Comancheros shows no signs of ending. With advanced communication, global networks, and leadership that learns from past mistakes, the gang remains one of the most enduring and dangerous criminal organizations of the modern era.